Welcome to Universal Downloads channel. In today's download, I'm going to be sharing the story of the Lyrans, basically. Some of you guys would have seen the story of the blue avians. This time I'm doing the story of the Lyrans. Now, the Lyrans are a very feline species originating from the Lyra constellation. And basically, they are said to have actually contributed to the seeding of humanity, which I actually do agree with. Now, the Lyrans are basically made of a certain DNA strand that was floating in the universe and led to mammal species. Now, they are specifically felines. Now, what they were able to do was take some of that DNA and actually send it to Earth with intentions. Now, I believe that did contribute to humanity, as it was a DNA strand of some sorts. And that's why humans are also mammals, and humans in prehistoric times actually had fur everywhere, just like, you know, a lion does or a cat does, basically, and also have intuitions and emotions and empathy. There's also the human ego as well. Now, that being said, this is part of my download, right? But also backed by other sources online as well, where it is actually vastly believed that Lyrans did contribute to the seeding of humanity. There's also this other download that I had where they've also contributed to actually having found another DNA strand from the universe and used that to actually end up with the draconian race. Now, this is information that has come to me in downloads, and you probably haven't ever heard of before, because I personally haven't until I had these downloads. And it's really strange because I've had small hints of it in the past where I knew that the draconians had been at warfare with a light species in the past and were then forced to kind of leave because they lost a battle and could no longer survive on Lyra, I suppose. And so the Lyrans booted them off, if that makes sense. And so a portal was used to then send them elsewhere where I guess it's better suited for them, I guess. And they ended up on Orion. And then came other species. But before that, Orion had the insectoid species. And so that's like mantis beings, spider beings, and other insectoid beings, which basically originate from Orion. And they've also tried to seed their own races here as well in the past, the insectoids, but that really just led to like small critters and things that you can see, right? So like you see ants, you see bugs, you see stuff like that. So they did send some strands as well. Now, basically, going back to the Lyrans having created the Draconians, the Draconians were made of a different DNA strand, which was reptilian and cold-blooded. And so when that merged with other universal compounds, it just led to a really dark, negative being, which were honestly being a menace on Lyra. So the Lyrans were like, okay, a disaster's happened. And that being said, I also do want to link it back to the bigger picture where, like, the divine would have found some way for these dark beings to exist and coexist in this universe with light beings anyways, and neutral beings, of course, because there needs to be both light and dark for a universe to continue evolving and moving, basically. So it all works hand in hand, right? There's like that duality side of things. But then at the same time, it's like they were problematic. They clashed, their egos clashed. So eventually it became very hard for the Draconians to exist on Lyra. So, and they had just lost. So because they no longer survived there, they were sent through a portal to end up on Orion somewhere where basically like the Lyrans just set this intention of like they're going to end up wherever it's best suited for them. So they go there, and then what happened was that the reptilian race descended from the Draconians and then started living on Orion. So then you have all these Orion races. And then they decided they're going to start trying to expand, because the Draconians always had the soul wound of being defeated by the Lyrans. And this hurt their ego immensely, and it always stuck with their consciousness, basically. So ever since then, they've always felt this urge to like overpower the light in this universe to defend their stance or what they stand for or what they're made of, basically. And they came to Earth with a dark agenda. They firstly tried to seed the reptilian race of dinosaurs, which eventually went extinct. And I am also going to say that light beings did contribute to bringing balance on Earth. And because dinosaurs were creating too much dark energy, balance had to be brought. So then that basically gave other light beings around the universe the green light to interfere, because there's a law of interference, right? Like you can only interfere with matters on Earth and what's happening on Earth when you basically are told that there is an imbalance. And that's like the divine kind of giving you that nudge, like, okay, yeah, now you can step in and kind of bring balance, right? So we weren't allowed to do anything until that. So that happened. There was a lot of light beings that worked across the universe to help achieve that. And eventually the Lyrans seeded humanity through sending DNA strands, but then of course there's other cosmic compounds that led to humanity as well. Like for instance, iron actually comes from like explosions on stars, basically, and comes from outer space. So iron is actually a mineral that is alien to Earth. It comes from outer space. It was never like native to Earth, if that makes sense. And so is calcium. Calcium also comes from outer space. So there is a massive part of humans that are very much made of light, and then of course made of water, which connects you to Earth and makes people very natural beings. That's why nature has such a huge play on humans as well. And so we're made of Earth as well as, you know, Lyran DNA strands and everything else. But I think the important note here is that even the Lyrans had a start. You know, the divine led to them and then worked through them basically for these other things to happen and everything else to manifest on Earth and then on Orion, whatever it is. But the Draconians have told the reptilians that they seeded humanity, but that is incorrect. That's absolutely incorrect. They had seeded the dinosaurs, but they went extinct. Okay? So that was another blow to their dark energy, I guess, and what they stand for, their ego. That was another blow to them. So then they were like, okay, we need to find sneakier ways. All right, so humanity is establishing on Earth. What can we do to perhaps infiltrate and try to carry out this dark agenda to prove our point again, to overpower? So now they've incarnated in human forms. They have, I guess, I don't know, some underworld civilizations going on and caves. I don't know. Okay, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But regardless, they are on Earth as well. That being said, in order to restore balance, there's also other light beings. Like, for instance, I'm an Arcturian light being starseed, so I come from Arcturus. And on Arcturus, we don't actually have like physical matter bodies, as in like how you would see like a human body. It's more like we're actually made of fire, so you exist in like a fire body, if that makes sense. And the soul cannot be destroyed, so your energy can exist in fire and is actually the fuel for that fire body, if that makes sense. So that's us. And then Pleiadians also exist in a light form, and they're more like yellows and blues, and their energy consciousness is also of light, and they're also incarnating, like their souls are incarnating as humans as well as us Arcturians. And then there's Syrians as well, incarnating around the world to help raise the frequency, restore balance, bring balance, keep balance. And then there's also the Andromedans, and they also exist in different light forms as well, but also work a lot with quantum physics. So there is a lot of metaphysical tech involved with them as well. And then there's also the Lyrans, who are also incarnating as well. And now the thing with Lyran Starseeds is that the only thing they have to watch out for is that ego as well, right? And so that's why I mentioned earlier that the divine led to them. Their DNA strand was floating in the universe, and eventually their souls were able to incarnate in a physical form. But it's ultimately the divine that's, created everything and led to everything that you see around us, including the insectoids from Orion. And right now on Earth, you're seeing like a massive play of all these energies here, right? Now, that being said, going back to the problem. So, the reptilians are living in an illusion and a lie. They think that the draconians that control their race led to humanity and walk around with these egos thinking that they can go around hurting people, siphoning energy from people, bringing people down, sabotaging people. And they basically just walk around like just a greedy being, just looking for anything and everything to just basically consume. And a lot of their, I guess, soul wounding just comes from, well, the thing with them is they don't actually feel, it's like it's very ego driven, but also greed driven. But also because of how like the draconians are as well, they're ego driven, right? Like they have this push towards Earth because of their ego being hurt. But the reptilians are the kind where they not only also want to control others, but they do it out of selfish gain. So it's like they're willing to be controlled by the draconians as long as they get something out of it. So the draconians are like, okay, go on Earth, we'll support you, carry out the Stark agenda, and you'll gain from it. So they just blindly go on and gain from it. And, well, what they think they're gaining when really, like, their soul is stuck, they're not getting anywhere, they're racking up all this, like, karma for hurting other souls and crossing all these boundaries and just not understanding the point of it. So I think there's something about them where, like, I just don't know. Like, there's definitely blockages in them fully comprehending, like, the bigger picture and just understanding things because, like, they're very closed off and it's like they don't even want to see the truth. And it's like, in order for them to genuinely start seeing the bigger picture, they would need to face the truth. But then at the same time, there would have to be something magical that happens for them to actually learn to feel emotions. But I believe some of them can when they're in a human form, but they usually like to shut them down because they're just told that, like, you're not meant to feel things. And it's the way they're raised as well and the way that they're conditioned, of course. So these beings are basically the root of a lot of the problems that you see on this planet that are anti-humanity, okay? So when I say anti-humanity, anything that creates inequality, creates adversity, discrimination, makes people's lives harder, makes people's lives difficult, creates scarcity, and basically puts people into survival mode and creates conflict and division amongst people. Okay, that is anti-humanity agenda. So that's exactly what they're doing. And you'll see that there's been a rise of it in different forms over the last few years. And just even in history over time, like they've always been doing anti-humanity things. And I don't understand why they think they're actually gaining something out of it. They're really not. Because you don't own anything in this universe. You can only temporarily own something in that sense, but you can't have it forever. But what does carry on is your karma. The way you treat people. And I just kind of see them as just functioning in this very robotic state where they haven't even really come into contact with their consciousness, and it's almost like there's this resistance for them to do it anyway because they would have to face the truth, and the truth means ego death. Ego death means having to see the whole universe as equality, everyone is equal. And that being said, they would have to confront the trauma that they faced of being controlled by draconians, for instance, because the draconians justify the control by this is what you have to do to have anything good, if that makes sense. So then the reptilians went on to create this like grey alien race, and I've talked about this in the past. And it's again that idea of like, okay, then we have this person to work for us, or, basically we can control them, we can power trip them the same way we got power tripped. So it's very much this trauma chain. But regardless, there is meant to be this light and dark at play, but basically, like, the Lyrans do have a hand in a lot of what we see around us. And they did also, in fact, create the dark beings that draconians are, leading to other dark beings. And to them, they would have seen it as a disaster, at the time, with their consciousness and their perspective. But then at the same time, there's also that higher picture of, okay, so there does need to be light and dark. So because they couldn't coexist in harmony, they had to be sent somewhere else. So then they went to Orion. But now they're living in this delusion of they think that they own this universe and that they created everything, and it's a lie. It's a delusion. It's an illusion. And I think anyone that is living this lie needs to at least hear this truth. Now, whether they admit it or not, or think on it or not, or choose to believe it or not is up to them. But if you think about it and this whole starseed stuff, it does make sense. So I personally believe that humans do have Lyran roots to some extent, but then other ingredients from the universe, and then also basically ingredients from Earth as well. So yeah, there's an origin story on not just the Lyrans, but the bigger picture of what they've done and how it leads to the bigger picture of Earth as well at this given time, and Starseed spiritual warfare and the relevance of that. So I hope this download brings some insights to someone. Any questions or any curiosity, or if there's anything you're confused about, please do comment it. I will respond to comments. Thank you so much for watching and have a blessed day.